be. Welcome back. I'm going to just take a little bit of time today and answer some questions, and we'll get back into a regular class on our next episode. Okay, Matt from Calgary asks, what is the difference between Wicca and witchcraft? Good question, and everybody seems to be trying to define those two terms lately. Over the past 10 or 15 years, it's become extremely big deal. And you'll hear lots of different opinions on this, and I guess I can chime in as far as my own understanding of what those terms mean. Okay, Wicca, as it tends to be practiced, is a New Age religion, a new religion that was born in the 1950s, coming from the teachings of Gerald Gardner. Gerald Gardner, if you look back into his Gardnerian craft, came up with and developed a system of working magic and what he called witchcraft. And it's obvious that it was based somewhat on his understanding of Margaret Murray's work. He supposedly was introduced to somebody from the New Forest Coven, probably back in the late 30s, early 40s. I think it was like 1939, if I can't remember. Old Dorothy Clutterbuck. And so, according to legend, he learned the craft from her, but it's also obvious that he became acquainted with Aleister Crowley and Cecil Williamson, and started to develop his own system based on a kind of a hybrid of all of these things between Murray and Clutterbuck and Crowley and Williamson. He began to, from what I understand, actually devise a system which has been which popularized the craft as we have come to know Wicca. And anything that is a descendant or highly influenced by the system that Gerald Gardner produced is what we would tend to call Wicca. Now, this is a very controversial topic, and there's so much controversy, and so many people are highly emotional about this stuff. And it's real important that everybody just kind of take a breath and keep their cool, because there's people that claim that their craft predates Gardner, and these people call themselves traditional witches. And traditional witches come from systems that don't have a lot necessarily in common with Gardner's system. But if you look down underneath it all, everybody, regardless of whether they come from a Wicca or a traditional witchcraft perspective, there are a few things that are in common. Then there's another branch of witchcraft that's a satanic witchcraft that was, if you look at in medieval and sorcery and things like that, a lot of people that were trying to go against the Roman Catholic Church during the Inquisition developed their own type of craft, which was based on a demonic sorcery. And they also sometimes call what they do traditional witchcraft. So it can get really messy when you try to define things. What I'm trying to do in this pod class is to give you a system that you can use on your own that's practical, not necessarily historical. All right. So this is I've been trained in a Wicca tradition. I've been trained in a very different tradition that I'm actually actively a part of. That's a witchcraft tradition that's kind of not like any other. You can hear about more of that on my other podcasts. And then I've also been trained by traditional witches. So what I'm giving you here is somewhat of a hybrid. And a lot of times what you'll hear from traditional witches, people who call themselves that, they'll really down Wicca and they'll down Gerald Gardner as if somehow it's bad. But that's not my experience at all. There's a lot of the Gardnerian craft that's extremely helpful, and you'll notice that as things progress, as we move farther and farther into the 21st century now, a lot of the traditional witches are getting stuff from Gardnerian Wicca, and a lot of the Wicca traditions are kind of hiving off and branching out and incorporating more of the so-called traditional craft in what they do. And what I recommend for all what my old teacher used to call new witchlings, budding people in witchcraft, is to find what works. Results are what is important. Results are your proof. If something's working, then that's what you use. If something's not working, then you might want to reconsider it. All right? So try stuff out. If it doesn't feel right in your gut, then don't do it. If it feels like you're drawn to it, then give it a try and then see how it works for you. But keep a diary, keep a magical diary, keep a craft diary. And be clear about what you did and what the results were, and that way you can have some objectivity and not just be sort of mesmerized by your own fantasies about what's real and what's not for you. So hopefully that kind of helps a little bit. There's a lot of people that do, there's a lot of infighting in witchcraft. There's a lot of people that don't like each other because they think that theirs is the right way and the other one's doing it wrong. And I stay way out of that because there's good to be gleaned from almost any system that I've been exposed to. And I just, I'm from the perspective of take the best and leave the rest. And I'm not sort of like the stock market. I don't fall in love with the stock. If it's giving me returns and dividends, I keep it. If it's costing me, then I get rid of it. Same thing with the craft. If it works for me, I keep it and I use it. If it doesn't work for me, I get rid of it. So hopefully that helps a little bit answer your question. Okay, and then somebody who asked not to be named asked about they want to do the craft, they want to practice the craft, they want to learn the craft, but they live in a situation where they have to keep it secret. So what do they do about tools? Okay, that's a great question. First of all, if you remember, I said that tools are actually not necessary, but they're very helpful in the training of the mind. They're very, very helpful, but they're not necessary. However, you do not have to paint those runes. In fact, those runes are not traditional witchcraft runes, but they're very powerful, and I like them. They actually come from the Key of Solomon, which is not a craft tradition; it's more of a high magic tradition. So there goes my hybridism again, and a lot of traditionalists would go, don't do that. So, but I like those runes, and those runes actually, if you read Paul Huson's Mastering Witchcraft, those are the very runes he recommended as well. But you don't need runes on your tools. You do not have to call attention to anything. If having a blade is going to call attention to yourself, try a letter opener. Just go find a nice letter opener. A wine goblet, that looks pretty. You could even use a coffee mug. If having a pentacle is going to call attention to yourself, if somebody discovers it, don't use one. You can use like a little bowl or a little plate. And if you want a 5-pointed star, you can either draw it in chalk and then erase it later, or you can always cut an apple horizontally and you'll see a 5-pointed star in there. You can put that in the bottom of the bowl and there can be your pinnacle. You can, for a wand, any stick will do. If you decide that you don't want a wand or a blade, you can always use your index finger and middle finger of your strongest hand. And when I say your strongest hand, I mean the hand that, like if you were going to eat an apple, which hand would you use? to eat the apple? Which hand would you feed yourself if you're going to eat a piece of fruit? That's that's going to be the hand that's your power hand. And you could just use your fingers. You don't even need a wand. You don't even need a blade if you don't want one. An incense thurible, if you can, a thurible can be just a little bowl, just like a little stainless steel bowl with a little sand in the bottom, and then you can toss it when you're done with it. And if burning incense is going to cause too much attention, then don't. You don't need it. You don't need anything except for your mind. So you don't need any tools. A lot of us, if we can have some tools, it really helps to facilitate oftentimes the process of training and using these energies. But you absolutely don't need any tools. And what you can do is have tools that are extremely nondescript, and just kind of have them over in an area of or in a cupboard or something, but don't call attention to themselves. The one thing that you do want to keep real secret and very guarded is your book, because you do want a book, because the only way you're going to train yourself magically is by keeping records. And so that's the only way that you're going to have somewhat of a scientific version of doing the craft, is by keeping a book of shadows of some sort, or grimoire. So that one you'll want to be very careful about. And if you get in trouble with that one, you can always do like we always say, burn it. If it looks like it's, these days you're not going to get burned at the stake, hopefully, and unless things change dramatically, in which case then we all get to go underground again. So hopefully that helps with that. Okay, and then I had another question here from, let me pull this up. Okay, I think it's Caius. I think I'm reading that right. Had a couple questions, so let's just take one at a time. Oh, he or she, I'm sorry, I don't know your gender. I think it's a he, but I could be wrong. Had a question about the food consecration ritual that I gave, and we discussed this also on the discussion board, but I want to just take care of these questions on the podcast as well. I live in a place where I cannot get organic food, so whenever I eat, I get this horrible feeling that I'm poisoning myself. I tell myself that it's okay and that I will only be going through this for a short time until I can start making some more money to move to a location where I can obtain certified organic food. So when it comes to food consecration, what do you recommend for me to do? Okay, first of all, don't get this horrible feeling that you're poisoning yourself. Instead, relax, see white light or bluish light moving into your food, relax your body, say the words blessed be either silently or aloud, and thank the earth for the food. Thank the food itself for letting itself be eaten, and know that as you are eating this food, that you're nourishing your body, but you're also nourishing your mind and your spirit, that you're eating vibrations, and that no matter what has happened to this food, it has now been consecrated, so that you are actually becoming healthier as you eat it. So you want to be careful of your mood while you're eating. So if you're thinking, oh my gosh, I'm poisoning myself while you're eating, that's probably what you're going to be doing. So you want to change that thought. Another question Caius has is, why should one not use myrrh only in air purification? Okay, that's just my opinion. It's just my opinion and my experience in doing magical perfumery. Myrrh corresponds in my training to the element of to the planet Saturn, and secondarily to the planet Moon, to the moon. And by itself, it's a wonderful herb used for opening portals. But for purification purposes, it's not my favorite thing. It's not going to hurt you, and it's not that it can't be used. It's just not my recommendation. I would much rather you use sage or lavender or frankincense if you want to use one of the gums, or you can choose to mix frankincense and myrrh. That's a wonderful purification. It's just that the vibration, in my experience and in my preference, is not the best by itself. Hopefully that helps. Okay. Also on our discussion board, Lance asks, Ariel, when consecrating the tools for the craft, can one save the potion of lavender, rosemary, and hyssop after each use? Or is it best to reestablish a fresh potion before each consecration? I guess my question is about vibrations. Do the vibrations naturally wane after the initial invocation? Great question, Lance. I prefer that you make a new one up. Anytime you're using water to purify, water tends to absorb vibrations, and it's just like when you're washing, like if you were taking a bath, you wouldn't want to reuse the bath water. So you want to that's one thing you want to replenish. You want to get new water, whether it's just salt and water or whether you're using the herbs in it as well. So definitely you want to get a new batch of water for your purifications, regardless of whether it's a consecration or any other kind of cleansing for ritual purposes. All right. And Midnight, who is also on the forum, has some wonderful questions and insights for us on our forum. We're very glad to have all of you there. Midnight's one of our original members, and we're very happy to have her. I think it's a her. Sorry if I'm screwing up everybody's gender, but these names are great, but they're not gender specific. Okay, Midnight says, Ariel mentioned duality in the new podcast with a couple of examples. I kind of get it, but I'm still a little unclear exactly what it is and how it relates to the craft. Does anyone have any thoughts on this? Okay, good. Let's just go over that real quickly again. Remember, we're talking about in the mortal world, three-dimensional reality, everything is dual. There's duality in nature. There's light and dark. There's male and female. There's yin and yang. There's up and down. There's in and out. There's inhale and exhale. And in the nature religions, and which the craft is one, duality is seen as a god and goddess, as a collaborative working. Whereas in a lot of the patriarchal type religions, and nothing against them, don't want to get anybody offended here, but a lot of times they're seen as opposing forces, and I don't ascribe to that particular point of view that duality are opposing forces. That's good and evil. Hell and heaven, those kinds of things. So in the craft, from my understanding of how we do things in witchcraft, is that we see everything as being complementary to one another rather than opposing one another. We're not out to fight evil. We are out to integrate ourselves and to become basically more powerful people. And to become more powerful people is to become more of who we really are, and to become one with nature, and to be able to work with nature rather than against nature. So hopefully that helps you. So duality, if you look at even what we see as God, we see God as a mother and father, not as a father and a devil that are all constantly at war with one another. They're actually lovers rather than warriors against one another. Hopefully that helps to clear that up. All right, and then who's this one? Oh, that's Midnight too. I'm fascinated by choosing a magical name. Would anyone care to share ideas on how to choose one? This is obvious off of our forum as well. Is it appropriate to change one's name as one goes along the path? Absolutely. You don't even need a magical name. It's not necessary for you to have a magical name. None of this stuff is cast in stone. But if you want to access your magical self, one tool to do that with is by choosing a magical name. Again, it's not necessary at all. But if you decide to do that, if you decide to go down that road and to choose a magical name, you can do it through deep meditation practices. And I have a lot of different kinds of meditations that I keep posting on the meditation podcast. And or you can just use that grounding and centering meditation on the Primer podcast. and relax your body, relax your mind, and ask for inspiration as to what your magical self is, what it likes to be called, and see what you get. You'll be drawn to different, over time, even maybe over the next week or so, to different names or reading different books, or it might come out of nowhere. I had a craft name that I was using for the longest time that just never really resonated with me. And somebody was writing me a piece of correspondence, craft correspondence, and they misspelled my name and they just transposed it all up. And they said, "Dear Ariel." And I thought, Ariel? That's not my name, but boy, I sure like that. So I looked it up, and it was a Hebraic name, which is not at all my background, but I still like the sound of it. I looked it up, and it was an angel. It meant Lion of God. And I thought, well, who wouldn't want to be Lion of God? So I chose it, and it stuck with, actually, it chose me, and it's stuck for years. But sure, you can change your name. There's no witch police. I always stress that there are no witch police as far as how to practice the craft. The only witch police there is the law of cause and effect, and that's for everybody. And what you do is, what you put into something is what you get back from it. And that's, like I say, everything you do to yourself. So that's what a lot of people will call the law of three, or the law of threefold return. And you can see it that way. You can conceptualize it as something that comes back to you. But I always see the law of consequence, or the law of cause and effect, as being actually what I do, I'm doing to myself, because an idea never leaves its source. So there's no witch police. Do what you will. Do what you will. And when they say, "and it harm none, do what you will," just see what that means is do what you will do. But if you're doing something to another person, recognize what you're doing to them, you're doing to yourself. So the ethics will take care of themselves once you realize that. All right, so that took care of a few of your questions. Hopefully that helps and tides you over till the next episode, which hopefully will be on in actually a day or two. We'll be moving forward. Just remember, too, that everything that I give you is going to be somewhat eclectic in nature. Some of it will be very Wiccan, and some of it won't be very Wiccan. I would recommend that you, first of all, you tune into your own gut and see which things you are or are not drawn to. And the ones that you're drawn to, those are the things that you should try first and see how they work for you. And if something just never resonates with you, delete it from your craft, delete it from your practice. All right. Well, it's always wonderful talking to you, and I will see you next episode. Blessed be.